Obviously, the alumni that's been considered for this award, which is one of our really highest honor that for all the graduating students from USC. So they have to have a significant body of work that is independent, critical, contributed to community building. And in Philip's case, it's especially meaningful because his body of work that is within a very influential, large architectural practice, yet that independent thinking and critical edge has never been really disappeared in this enormous body of work. Second dimension of that significance is his work actually embraces issues that are not only local, but actually very global. And as urbanization, sometime 20 years ago, pick on this urbanizing force, that is really something significant. And I also think the third dimension of that reason is that he represents a rigor that's still on its making, and it's accelerating. It's basically escalating. So it is not a conclusion of a career, but it's more of another tipping point that actually, another threshold that's going even more significant.
Phil is already recognized nationwide, if not worldwide, as one of the leading urban designers and urban planners in the country.
The beauty of Phil is always rounding up. Everything that I've ever been involved with, when we're in the room together, if I say something, he goes up from there.
He's very easy to work with, very collaborative, has a great sense of humor.
And Phil's approach is always to capitalize on the unique resources that are there.
I was kind of like the parent, and I didn't mind it at all because I always enjoyed kids because I took care of kids all my life. I didn't have any.
Some of my most vivid memories are in the basement of the Gamble House, where we had a studio in the corner where we spent many an all-nighter.
So Phil, if you know him, has ways of getting what he wants done. This is one of the most beloved guys that's ever lived here.
Phil has done an incredible job of weighing all these different factors that it takes to make a city livable. And part of that, you have to believe, started here at the Gamble House, with his living here and experiencing the house and experiencing great architecture and understanding how the house and the environment work together.
I think it's incredibly fortunate to be interested in urban design and work for a firm like Skidmore, Owings & Merrill. From the very beginning, the firm was interested in designing cities. Some of the first projects were the planning of the World's Fair in Chicago, doing new communities for the Tennessee Valley Authority, looking at the larger issues of circulation. Nat Owings really brought this larger perspective to the firm from the very beginning. Nat Owings was invited to come to Washington. Nat brought David Childs into the picture, and David carried that legacy forward.
He and Pat Moynihan hired me to work on the design of the Pennsylvania Avenue plan, and that blossomed into the National Mall and the Federal Precinct. Phil has continued the tradition of SOM and their interest in large-scale design, and it only is getting larger and more relevant as we deal with the environment, as we deal with linkages between political bodies and geological areas.
Phil always takes the long view. I mean, he's looking not at short-term issues, but at how you can build community, how you can build cities, and understanding first, you know, what is the platform in which this is taking place.
A city needs to be pedestrian-oriented, and it needs to be ordered. And then the chaos comes from individual buildings and people.
In 1955, very few people in the world really were living in major cities. So you see how many cities of over 5 million people were in the world. I mean, you had Los Angeles and Chicago and New York. You had Mexico City and Tokyo. We go from 1955 to, let's say, 1975, you start seeing more cities over 5 million people, which is an indication of global migration. As we move to 1995 or 2000 or 2015, look what happens. We have this tremendous new generation of cities over 5 million people that are basically stretching from northern China, Korea, Japan, all the way down around Southeast Asia, all through India and over to North Africa. Are these cities ready for this? Can they anticipate this kind of growth and engineer their cities so that they can accommodate this growth this quickly? This is a huge challenge for us, and we are really living now in a very different world than in 1955. We've had a great relationship with the city of Chicago for many, many years. Chicago has a great planning legacy with Daniel Burnham, and so we're lucky to be able to build off of that incredibly strong framework of streets, transit, and public open space. It's been a great lesson for us that a city that is building off of a strong civic plan can move forward in great ways. And we've tried to leverage what we've learned in Chicago to the planning in Chinese cities. So our work in Shanghai, in Beijing, in Wuhan, Shenzhen has really been about the principles of good city building. Some of the issues I think we're facing today that we see in China is that the population that is basically still in rural communities and focused on farming are making very small amounts of money. Yet the growing of food is critical not only to the Chinese population but to the world's population.
It was his project, Qingyun Ma, this extraordinary island, you know, at the delta of the Yangtze, close to Shanghai. Phil's approach is always broad and expansive, and so I think his vision, especially related to sustainable, locally grown food for this large metropolitan area that's become a culinary capital, you know, was really extraordinary and something that, you know, you wouldn't find in Asia often.
Keeping farming close to cities is critically important so that you have locally grown foods. You're not trucking food all around the country. Not everything should be developed as part of the city. Some rural open space areas, some agricultural areas should absolutely be preserved. A great city anywhere in the world should be beautiful, culturally rich, and generally shining, with a human energy that courses through its streets and public spaces.
But in terms of city designers, I mean, Phil's at the top. But it goes way beyond that. I mean, he's a visionary.
It's not about being visionary. I think that it's about a commitment to a subject as complex as cities.
What it is really is to develop a symbiotic relationship between man and nature, so that it's actually giving from each side. It's give and take.
He was always interested in, if you will, the larger picture, the implications for the community, for the neighborhood.
Jane Jacobs talked at length about the right kind of density to live in. She was advocating for neighborhoods of 80 to 100 units per acre. Something like North Beach in San Francisco or Brooklyn, where you're living in close proximity to many people, and yet you're still at a density where you know your neighbors. This is a great model moving forward, where we can accommodate high density but live still in very vibrant, safe, great neighborhoods.
This holistic approach that looks in an integrated way at all of these complicated elements that go into community building, into city building, are keys to success in the future.
Only do what we can in our time, and it's important to go after the most critical problems in the time that you're living, I feel, and solve the problems that affect the most people.
Our challenge moving forward in the 21st century is really how to build great cities, livable cities, and be able to live in higher density environments.
We are never going to win by telling people no. We're never going to win by telling people they can't or they shouldn't. We're going to win by making a city that is more beautiful and more intelligent than any city we've ever seen. That's when we'll get to sustainability.
I believe we are making a difference in the world, so it's great to be a part of that, and it's great to be at Phil's size. He takes on these new challenges.
When you work all over the world, you can very quickly lose sight if you're only dealing in the day-to-day. So broadening the conversation with our colleagues and other collaborators, helps give us that grounding on which to remind ourselves of what we are doing.
It's remarkable to be able to sit with mayors of cities in countries that you're not from. I think everybody in this room feels that we are really blessed with this role we found ourselves in.